All right, you guys, we are going to make the cat bird feeder. This is probably like a level 2 because there's a lot of pieces. It's not hard, but there's a lot of pieces to put on, so it does take a little bit longer. So kid age with like a little bit more patience. So I would say like probably like 8 and up would be a good age for this project. You know your kid. If they like to sit and do projects, then this one would be fine for them, even if they were 5. If they like to sit and do things for a long time, then they could definitely do this. All right, so what we're gonna do first is we gotta get our water. So you're gonna get a little container of water. We have our toothpick and we have our clay. I wanna make sure we have clothes that we can get dirty or wear an apron. As far as your surface goes, I have this table. It's an unfinished wood table so that clay doesn't stick to it. If you have a finished wood table, you might want to tape down some newspaper. And the reason you tape down the newspaper is because the clay will pull the newspaper up. If you tape it down, it'll stay nice and tight down to the table. All right, so let's get started. We're going to make this clay bird feeder. You could put little bird seed in his mouth and leave him outside. Now this project was made with clay and fired in the kiln and glazed. This is air dry clay, so you can do it as a project at home and paint it in a few days with acrylic paints. All right, so we're going to break this into 2 pieces. So I'm going to use my toothpick and figure out where the middle is and kind of push it down so it makes like a little line. And then I'm going to take my hands here on this, and I usually will like twist it. Or you can cut it with your toothpick. Your toothpick's kind of fragile though, so you probably end up breaking it. All right, so we're going to put one of these aside. And we're going to roll this other one into a ball. Probably like the bigger, well, they're both should be about the same size, but if you have one that's a little bit bigger than the other, set the bigger one aside because that's going to be for all the little pieces, so you want to make sure you have enough for that. All right, so I'm rounding this out. It doesn't have to be perfectly round because we're going to mess it up anyway, but if it's round, it's easier. Okay, we're going to do a simple pinch pot. We're actually going to make our ball and then stick our thumbs in one of the sides and start pinching it out. If you get any cracks like that, just smooth them out, cover them up. We're going to pinch down, and we're going to make a bowl. I'm going to pinch this all out until it's about the thickness of an Oreo cookie. If we have any cracks that are starting to happen, just like kind of pinch them back together. Make sure you're pinching out the bottom so that it's nice and thin also. We don't want to leave any part of this too thick or it's going to take too long to dry. And we want it no thinner than an Oreo cookie because if it's thinner, then it could be fragile, more fragile and break easy. So we're working this, we're pinching it. You can use the back of your fingernail to smooth out any cracks. You can use water. But really, you don't really need to do that till you get it the size you want because it's probably going to happen again. And we want it as big as we can get it while still being thick enough because this is the opening of the cat's mouth. So we're making sure that the bottom is pushed out, pinched out. And I don't have it nice and you can see it's kind of crazy, but that's okay because we're going to spread it out anyway and make it more of like an O. All right, so I got some cracks going on here. I can smooth these out with my fingernail. and use some water if I want. I'm using the back of my fingernail, not the pointy part, like the flat top part of my fingernail. You can also use the back of a spoon if you don't want to use your fingernail. All right, so that looks pretty good. Now we're gonna like kind of pat it against the ground, however we want it to kind of sit. Now a tongue is still gonna come out of this, and it's got feet, right? So it's gonna be higher off the ground, but we don't want it to be a perfect circle. We want it to be kind of like it almost kind of looks like a sad face, right? But he's a tricky cat. All right, we're gonna set that aside. And we are going to break this into 3 pieces, this last piece, so we can roll it out and kind of mark 3 equal pieces here. One of these pieces is going to be the tongue. One of these pieces is going to be the tail and the feet and the eyes and the whiskers. And then we also need ears, right? So we're going to do the tongue next. So we're going to pinch this out into like a tongue shape and keep measuring it to see if it fits in there. So we want to kind of like an oval instead of a circle this time. And you can use your hand, the palm of your hand and your fingers to flatten this out. Or you can use both fingers, both hands at the same time. We don't want this any thinner than an Oreo cookie though. So that's looking pretty good. Pretty alright tongue shape. We can flatten the edges a little bit by rolling it on the table. And then we can get the cracks out with our fingernail or by rubbing water on it. On the side that you like. Don't worry about the other side. So pick the better side. All right, so in order to stick these in here, you can't just stick it in there and hope that it stays. You have to actually make what's called clay glue. And what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna scratch this up in here. I don't know if you guys are gonna be able to see this, so let's see. I'm gonna show it to you on this first. So this is our good side, so I'm flipping it over and I'm gonna like draw a line halfway because only half this tongue is gonna go in the cat's mouth. And I'm going to scratch this side up really good. The better you scratch this up, the better it's going to stick down. So you want to make sure you go all different directions and go all the way out to the edges and set that aside. And then you got to do the same thing on this piece. You got to scratch it up in here. Wherever you think the tongue is going to touch. All right. So what's going to happen now is we're going to flip this over and stick this in here. We're going to add water to one side. Tap some water on there because that's going to make it a little stickier. When you rub the water on there, make sure you're not rubbing out all the scratches you just made. And what's going to happen now is the pieces you just scratched up are going to hopefully bond together and hold on to each other. Like that. Okay, so we're going to turn this over, put the scratched up side on the scratched up side, and then push it down. Hopefully you can hear like the water squishing and squeezing out. Don't want to push down too hard because then your piece might stick down to the table. Make sure it's not stuck down to the table. All right, we're gonna move on now. That looks pretty good. It's holding in there, right? We're gonna move on to, we're gonna make the ears next. The ears and the feet. So I'm gonna just break off like 4 pieces for the feet, and we'll round those out. Make sure they're kind of all the same size. And hopefully whatever you have left, you can push out. And I like to make it into like a square. You can hit it on the table to make those edges kind of flat. Smooth it out with your fingers. Pinch out kind of like a square shape. It needs to be kind of big, but you don't want to go too thin, so we don't got too much here. So we don't want to really go thinner than that. So this cat's ears aren't going to be too big. We're going to mark that in the middle and then cut that down the middle. And those are going to be his ears, like that. This one's going to have a little bit shorter ears, but that's fine. So we got some ears here. We're going to set those aside. We're going to make the feet, roll these into little balls, and then just push them down and set them aside. Roll them into a little ball and push it down. Try to make it the same size, about the same size as your other foot. Push it down. We need 4 feet. If you got any cracks in them, you can smooth it out with your fingers. You're not really going to see much of the feet, so you don't have to worry about that too much. Okay, we're going to set these aside, and we're going to make the tail, the whiskers, the eyes, and the nose out of these. So I would take half of this probably for the tail. So we're going to take half of that for the tail. I'm going to roll out a tail. Probably the thickness of like your finger. What I'm doing is I'm just pushing down on it and rolling it out the outside. And you can make it thinner than your finger if you want. It just depends. Like if you want a longer tail, you can make it thinner. That way it gets a little bit longer. That's pretty good though, because he'll be able to have like a nice little curl at the top. Smooth that out. My clay is drying out a little bit because I've been working with it a lot. All right, so my tail is going to go like something like that off the back, like a little question mark. We're going to set that aside. And we need, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pieces out of this. So we're going to break off some pieces for the eyes. And the eyes should be about the same size. The piece for the nose should be about the same size. You can roll those into balls really quick and then press them out. Those should be smaller than your feet. And then we're going to make like a little triangle nose here. Now this nose is totally upside down. And I didn't notice that until after I had finished it. So make a little triangle, and really it's supposed to go this way. I think, right? That makes more sense. It goes that direction. Because right now it kind of looks like a beak. So we'll do it that way, like that, right? Or does it go that way? I don't know. All right, so we are going to make whiskers out of these. So I'm going to cut this in half. You just use this to cut it all the way. Just make sure you don't break your toothpick because you got a lot of gluing to do soon. And then after you've got this in half, you can cut that into 3 of the same sections. Pinch those off or twist them off. You need to end up with like 6 that are the same size, like 6 pieces that are about the same size. That's why this is one of the more advanced ones, because there's so many pieces happening. All right, so we're gonna make whiskers out of all these, and we're gonna do it the same way we did the tail, by just rolling it out. We don't want them too thin. So it's gonna depend on how much clay we have left. We don't want them any thinner than that, I would say. So we got one made. And we want them pretty much to be the same size, right? The same length, at least. So we'll measure. There's another one. It's almost the same size. Here we go. 3 more. Two more. After this, we get to start putting our cat together. Because right now it doesn't look like much of a cat. All right, so we got 6 whiskers. We're gonna set those aside somewhere. The whiskers are probably gonna be like the whiskers and the tail are gonna be like the last things that go on. All right. So the first things we're gonna do are the eyes and the nose so that we know how far back to set the ears. So we're gonna stick the eyes and nose, kind of like get an idea of where we want them. Now this should curve down a little bit so you can see them. See how the front of our face is down a little bit like that? Do we like our nose like that? Or do we like it like this? Now that I have it like this, it looks weird. I think it goes like this. I was wrong. Okay, so I like my eyes right there, so I'm gonna actually trace them on where I've got them. So that I could put them back on in the same spot. I'm gonna take them off and scratch my eyes up. And then scratch my circles up here. Try to stay in the line so you have less to clean up. And I like to hold my hand underneath because I'm holding it up so I'm not pushing it down. It might like push down if I'm pushing hard, so I like to hold it up and make sure I'm not like poking all the way through. All right, that looks pretty good. We're gonna put some water on both of our eyes. Pat some water on there. And then we're gonna push from the underside and the top to get those on. I got water on my fingers so I could smooth out like some of the wrinkles there. And then this guy goes on. Make sure you're pushing from the top and the bottom. You can get some water and smooth it out. Smooth any of your other cracks out. All right, now we got to get this nose on. So the nose is only going to be touching at the top. So you're going to just scratch up the top here. And then we're going to scratch up where the nose is going on between the eyes on the edge. Get some water on the nose, stick that where it goes and push it down. He kind of looks like Elmo right now until we give him some ears and some whiskers. All right, so we've got that. Now we want to put the ears on because those go behind the eyes pretty close, because you're going to be looking at it from the front, so you don't want them like way back here. You want them about right there, and you can make them touching at the top, you can have them have like a gap in between. I know I'm going to go pretty much right. I'm going to just trace how long this ear is on both sides. And same over here. So I know where to scratch. And you could have turned it around. I guess that would have been easier. Okay, so you can see where I traced both ears. And so we can scratch that up. And then we got to scratch the bottom of the ears up. And remember, the more scratching you do, the better it's going to stick. You don't want to just scratch up one side. You want to make sure you're scratching up both sides so that they can like attach to each other. All right, so we're going to get some water on this one. I'm going to stick it on there, and I'm going to push from the underneath side. So I'm pushing from the inside and the top to make it lay down there flat. Making sure all the edge is touching. And you can actually take the flat side of your toothpick, if you have a flat side of your toothpick, and kind of erase these lines here. You can take the water and smooth out any of the cracks. And then that ear is done. And then we got to get some water on this ear. I'm going to push from the inside and the outside. Pushing it down nice and tight. Smooth out any cracks. The back of your fingernail. And I like to use this and go along the seam on both sides. Just push them together a little bit more. All right, so we're getting close. Almost got all the elements needed for a cat. You just need some whiskers, tail and a feet, and some feet. All right, let's do the feet next. We're going to put the feet like this. He's got to have 4 feet. So they might go up onto the tongue. So however they fit on there. And you're going to trace. So I'm hovering over the table and I'm going to trace these feet on there wherever they sit. You might need help with this part. All right, so we got 4 little circles on there. I'm going to scratch them up. And scratch this up. Make sure you get wherever the foot is going to be. So if the foot's going to be like underneath the tongue right here, you want to scratch up under the tongue. It depends on how big your cat's mouth ended up being. And we can make sure we're scratching in both directions, not just in one direction. All right, so I'm going to set this down, and I'm going to scratch up the feet, one side of the feet, one side of each foot. And then we're going to put our water on here. All right, and kind of line them up how they were under there. They're pretty much like this. Maybe a little farther apart. Tap some water on these. And then we're going to look and line it up. And then we're going to press down on our tongue. Now here's where we can curl like the tip of our tongue if we want. Like this one kind of goes down and curls. You can curl the tip of your tongue. Make sure those are on there. Pressed good. You're just going to see them a little bit from the side, the feet. And it kind of gets them off the ground a little bit. All right, so we've got feet now. Now let's do the tail next, because that's in the back. So let's see, do I like my tail like this? That's pretty cute. We'll do it like that. All right, so I'm gonna stick it on there, kind of where I like it, and trace it. And glue it on the same way we've been gluing on everything else. So we can lift them up, scratch this up. You'll be really sad if you don't scratch this up good and your tail falls off. So make sure, I know we've been scratching lots of things up and it takes a little bit of patience, but you'll be a lot happier if your ears and stuff aren't falling off later once it's drying. All right, so now we got to do the inside of this. I would say the cat probably takes the longest out of all 6 designs we're doing, just because it has so many pieces. All right, we're going to get some water on the tail. Tap, tap, tap. And then line it back up with where we had it. And like we've been doing, push from the inside of the cat. Its mouth. So we don't lose our shape there. And then you can smooth this out into nothing. Make it look like it's coming from underneath. You can also smooth out any of these cracks we got. Big ones, use the back of our fingernail. And then some water. All right, we've got a cute little tail. All right, all we need is whiskers. Let's see if all these whiskers fit on here. They're pretty. All right, so what we're gonna do first is we're gonna get 3 whiskers together, and we're gonna pinch them at the top. Pinch these guys together. And do the same with the other side. Line them up and then pinch them together. So, and the reason why we have the whiskers laying flat like this on the cat is because if you have them left up like this, they're a lot easier to break off on accident. So it's better to lay them flat on the surface of the cat. All right, so we are gonna lay this on here and trace out the kind of triangle shape we got going on. And scratch that up. We're going to put the whole side of whiskers on at the same time, so at least that's going to save a little bit of time. But make sure you scratch this up really good so it sticks on good. All right, and we're going to do the underneath side of these whiskers. Get some water on it. Tap, tap, tap. And then lay them where you want them. And push it down from the outside. You can spread the whiskers apart and make sure you're pushing from the inside also. And you can make sure they stay separated with your toothpick here. Make sure you got them pushed down good. And we just need to do the other side. Our last piece. Woo-hoo. Figure out where it goes. About right there. Trace it. Scratch it up. And then scratch up the back side of our whiskers. You can scratch them each up separately, or you can go across all of them. Get some water on there. And stick it on where we wanted it. And it's kind of important to make sure it's going as close to the nose as the other side. So you definitely want to measure that. Push from the inside and the outside. Trying not to push these all the way together so they still kind of remain separate whiskers. But that looks pretty good. I'm going to smooth out the top of this whisker here. And there's our little cat bird feeder. You can put some bird seed in there and set it outside and see if a bird will come and sit in it. This should dry in about 2 days, and then you guys can paint it with acrylic paint or whatever paint you have at home. That's about it. You might have to do a couple coats of each color. And go ahead and smooth out anything else you see until you like it. But a lot of these little cracks will get filled in with paint, so you don't have to worry too much about any of that. Any big cracks you definitely want to fix because they'll just get bigger as it dries. But that looks pretty good. He's cute. He's a little bit smaller than our other guy, but pretty much the same. All right, guys. Thank you.